like this. Well, we're better. Now, that has nothing to do with it when you don't want to do it. Is that coaching? Or is that intestinal fortitude you have to have with you? You're going to blame others for you not showing up? I heard Tone and Rob and everyone, and I heard Seth. It's coaching. Do you really need to have somebody tell you to show up and play hard? Are the egos so big in the higher echelons that they can't stop trying to reinvent the wheel? No, they do that. Latino, the players know if they do well, no coaching changes. That's lame. I'm not going to sacrifice my play to get a coach fired. That means I'm lowering my standards. That's not being a football player. That's being a politician. Don't ever lower your standards in anything you do for somebody else, whether it's at their expense or someone else's expense. When you lower your standards, you are changing the culture inside of you. Man, I despise people who say that shit. Hey, Sills, did you see those guys just... Well, God, you got to have something inside you that makes you want to go to work. Get up off your ass. Hey, all of you that have jobs every day, to get up and paint houses or put luminous siding on homes or pave streets. You get up off your fat asses every day and go to work. Nobody's coaching you up. Think about that. You think somebody's coaching you to get up, put your snow boots on, and go out and pave a road? You need a coach to do that? Or do you know that's what you are and what you have to do to support your family? Man, don't talk to these players like they're children. Well, you know, the coaches, they lost. Fuck the room. What about you? Nobody's going to hand you shit. Eagles thought they were going to get a game handed to them last night. It's what I looked at. What a disgrace. I knew you didn't have a chance to win that game. You had no shot at it. Let's bring Tone in. Jeez.
What's good, Sills?
I don't know, man.
But I'll start with this. Let me reiterate this from the last show to make sure we got clarity. I held everyone accountable earlier. Not just coaches, not just front office. The first people I called out according to last night's game, was players. They had no effort, no heart. They were listless. They had no desire, no fire, no energy. Again, I want to make sure my position is held clear, because I believe this problem doesn't just fall on someone holding the clipboard, doesn't just fall on someone pushing a pencil. It falls on those guys who put on those shoulder pads every day, who dedicate their lives to the game. They're getting paid millions upon millions upon millions, 6 figures, 7 figures, 8 figures, however you want to slice it. Some of these guys are nine-figure guys. And to show up with that level of effort, that level of commitment, to look like that on the sideline, completely unacceptable. Jalen Hurts pissed me off last night. He pissed me off last night because the entire time I'm watching the game, I said to myself, if I see him shake his head one more damn time, because overall, at the end of the day, you got to respond to the blitz. The coaches, yes, they have to have things built in for you to respond to the blitz. Absolutely. But those players, no tackling effort. There were three explosive plays that destroyed the Eagles yesterday. And they all led to touchdowns. 44-yard touchdown by David Moore on the first quarter. Trey Palmer, 57-yard touchdown in the third quarter. And Chris Godwin, 23-yard touchdown in the fourth quarter. All three of those touchdowns came after those guys broke at least 1 or 2 or 3 tackles. So I'm trying to understand, how couldn't these guys find a way to motivate themselves for a playoff game? They played this game at every level, NFL, college, high school. Some of them probably went JUCO. You never know. Pee wee, however you want to slice it. And you guys can't wake up for a playoff game, a game where all the chips are on the line. There's no do-overs, and you guys can't get up for that. We got some real issues on our hands. So, again, I want to make my position clear. This falls primarily on players for their effort, without a shadow of a doubt. We could talk about Nick Sirianni and Harry Roseman, another time. But that effort, you can't excuse that whatsoever.
Tone, did you see any different type of effort from the Giants game, the Cardinal game, the Seahawks game? Didn't it look the same?
Everything looked the same. It looked like Seattle.
There's no sense of urgency.
It looked like Seattle. It looked like
Arizona.
Dallas. It looked like Arizona. It looked like all those games. You know what I mean? So,
how about getting benched? How about getting benched because you don't have a commitment to get guys on the ground?
Yeah. There was a point in the game where I was thinking, I'm like, hold on, where the hell is Hassan Reddick? And then I'm like, wait, Nolan Smith is on the field for a long period of time. And then I lost Bradbury in the fold. So I'm like, where the hell are these guys? Come to find out, from what I heard, these guys got benched because they didn't want to tackle. They didn't want to tackle. That's where we are now. Guys don't want to tackle. This has been a slow burn. This has been a slow death. You know what I mean? And let's just call it what it is, right? Eagles fans don't want to hear this, but I'm going to tell you. The Eagles were front runners. They've been front runners. And here's the thing, right? We didn't know they were front runners last year because they were always in the front. But usually you don't know you're a front runner until you're in the back. And the Philadelphia Eagles, after that 10-1 start, fell to the back of the bus. And they realized that they were front runners. We realized they were front runners, but we didn't want to accept it. The moment they came across some real adversity, some real troubled waters, they couldn't swim, they couldn't paddle, they couldn't plug the holes, they couldn't do nothing. So again, a collapse like this doesn't just fall on front office, doesn't just fall on coach. It falls on player effort, player respectability, player pride. I saw grown men give up on themselves last night. I saw a quarterback that looked completely disinterested in the football game last night. I saw one player. I saw two players show up last night. I saw Devontae Smith show up, and I saw Milton Williams show up last night.
Yep.
Those were the two players, to me, that jumped off the screen.
Yep.
Everybody else, I have nothing good to say about you.
Yep.
Devontae Smith and Milton Williams. That's it.
Smith is such a pro. He is such a
pro.
He is such a absolute 100% professional.
Every time he had a chance to touch that ball, he made sure he did something with it. And that's how you know a guy shows up when he's called upon. Every time he touched that rock, he felt the need to try to take it to the house. And he tried. He did his best. I think he ended the game with like 8 catches, 150 yards, something like that. He was a man out there. Milton Williams, 2 back-to-back plays, the TFL and a sack to knock them out of field goal range, which kept you in the game. And then Jalen Hurts, you settle for a safety?
14-yard line, too.
From the 14-yard line. How do you get a safety from the 14-yard line?
I've never seen that.
Jalen Hurts needs to get back into the lab. I've been saying this all year. As much as I love him, as much as I'm going to continue to root for him, and as much as he's my guy, he's not a finished product. So people need to stop talking about him like he is.
They rushed him.
He's not a finished product, and I'm willing to admit that, right? I'm comfortable with the quarterback. I like him as a quarterback. I believe the ceiling is high, but we need to start pretending like he just has it all figured out already. He does not. He does not. He still struggles with simple blitz packages.
I'm going to show you something here. And
I'm a fan.
I pointed this out again to everyone. And I know you got this when I pointed this out. Purdy, Shanahan, Mahomes, Reed, LaFleur, Love, Brady, Josh Allen.
I got you. You got to put competent people around these guys.
Have nobody. Lamar. Todd Monken.
And even before that, he had what was it, Roman?
Yep. And he was an MVP with him.
And he was right
with Greg Roman.
Right.
He was an MVP. He had 30. He led the NFL in passing touchdowns with 36.
Right. Even Sam Howell has somebody competent, and Eric Bieniemy.
Right. Eric Bieniemy. I mean, look at even Daniel Jones with Brian Dable.
Matthew Stafford, McVay. Competence.
Explain to me why. And by the way, I'm going to hook you guys up with something. And Tone, this goes to you too a little bit here because I heard you talking about all these big name guys. Get out of that. Here's your list.
That's another thing. That's another thing I want to clarify too. So
here's the list. Okay, clarify before I read the list.
Yeah. So basically, what I was saying earlier was I was saying one or two things. I was saying if this team, if this organization has plans to try to get out of this hole they're in, they're going to have to change their philosophy. Right now, there are a handful of coaches that are available. They will only be available to you if your philosophy changes. These coaches are Vrabel, Belichick, Harbaugh, so on and so forth. But the odds of them landing those kind of guys are slim to none. Because how can I bet on them to change their philosophy when they're so entrenched? Harry Roseman is so entrenched. They're so locked into this, this analytics, and also Rob Ellis even brought it up. He brought up the fact that, we can't even really bank on them really pivoting because he has yet to hire an experienced head coach at any point in his 30-year tenure with the organization. So how can we bank on that? So what we were doing was Rob and I was ping-ponging back and forth what it could look like, what it would look like, what it will look like, and what it should look like. So we were trying to attack all angles of the scenario.
Okay.
But as of right now, I believe that based off everything they've shown us, we can't bank on them making the right decision.
Here's the list that the Eagles will look at. Here's who you are. Ben Johnson, OC Lions. Bobby Slowick, OC Texans. Frank Smith, OC Dolphins. Maybe Eric Bieniemy, Commanders. Brian Callahan, OC Bengals. Shane Waldron, OC Seahawks. Dave Canales, who I like, OC Bucks. Mike Kafka, OC Giants. Adam Stenovich, OC Packers, working with Jordan Love. That's your list, dude. Those Vrabel, as a manager, guys, I'm telling you, something will happen in the front office. Okay? Laura, we'll see. But see this list here? Tone, this is the list that this guy's MO has been for 30 years. It's not Vrabel. It's not Belichick. It's not Tomlin. Those guys are nowhere in the radar of, because you know why? Here, let's first start here with this. Do you think the Eagle office and front office and the owner and all them think that this is a front office issue, or do you think that they think this is a coaching issue?
Oh, they definitely think it's a coaching issue.
Well, then you got another year and a half.
Right. But let me ask you,
with philosophy being the same.
Let me ask you this, because here's the thing, right? This is something that requires, some layers being peeled back. Is this about hiring someone with a strong personality, or is it about hiring someone that has too much experience? Which is it that you're avoiding? If you're the Eagles, if you're Jeffrey Lurie, if you're Harry Roseman, what are you actually avoiding? Are you avoiding
rocking the boat?
Right. Are you ignoring someone who's rocking the boat, or are you ignoring someone with experience? Which is it?
Rocking the boat.
But that's two different things. Unless you're putting that on. Unless you're saying rocking the boat is,
you have to hire a guy that doesn't rock the boat.
Right. So, but what I'm asking is, yes, rocking the boat. That's someone with a strong personality, right? So
no,
what I'm trying,
that's someone who will go along with what you're doing.
Okay. So,
but let me tell you what Shane did. What Shane and Gannon did is brilliant. Now that I look back at it, Gannon was an angler and a conniver and a backstabber. Shane knew how to maneuver through things work his way through the system.
All right, well, let me say this then. All those names you did name, right? The Ben Johnson, all those kind of guys, right? They obviously don't have the head coaching experience, right?
Mhm.
But who's to say their personalities aren't like I'm not equating
Like Mike Tomlin.
I'm not equating a stiff personality with someone's experience. So that's why I'm asking, is it strictly the personality they're trying to avoid?
Yeah.
Or is it strictly the experience they're trying to avoid?
It's the personality
Because
that's going
experience breeds confidence.
Yeah,
And
but also when you're a confident individual in what you're doing in life, especially when you're a coordinator, you've got to have conviction. And what I think happens with that organization, let me tell you, man, Philly is a conviction play. It's not an analytics play. And when you have people who have conviction like that, remember something. My daughter said something to me, Tone, that I'll never forget. She said this 10 years ago when she was like 16 years old. Hey, Dad, just remember, when you have an attitude or an opinion on something, always be prepared to have it challenged. My young kid said that to me, and I was like this. The more of a conviction that you have in an opinion or a play that you want to run, always be prepared that it's going to be challenged. I think the Eagle organization, I think they try to stay away from people who challenge their authority. I think that's what Angelo said last hour.
I would agree with that. I would agree with that wholeheartedly because
look at the people they've had
it all
in the building that have challenged their authority and how look the guy in Baltimore is the prime example of it.
Yeah, it all goes hand in hand, right? If you're an experienced individual, you have confidence. And if you have confidence, you have convictions. And if you have convictions, you're not willing to let anybody just say anything or do anything to you. And that's the kind of person, to me, that they've been avoiding or they've been trying to avoid, right? But here's the thing. They're trying to put the genie back in the bottle. And what I mean by that is if you hire a head coach and he's successful and he wins for you, what do you think is supposed to happen? You think he's supposed to just sit on his hands and think he's not supposed to have an opinion?
You had that.
But that's my point, right? They're fighting this infinite feedback loop. They think that they can just continue to keep a coach under their thumb. And my thing is, what do you think is supposed to happen when you're dealing with someone or you hire someone to do a job and they're doing well and then they're doing so well to the point where they start to have confidence and then they want to start being incorporated in certain decisions? That's a natural progression of business, but they're trying to avoid that part of it. They're trying to just
yourself.
They're trying to just have someone.
You're frustrating yourself with this. Remember, it's about control. It's not about winning. It's more important. But
that's the part that's frustrating, right? You're trying to control something that, back to my point about the genie being about, you can't control someone's you can't control what you want them to win for you, but you don't want them to reap the benefits of winning for you.
You want them to win.
What are we talking about?
You want them to win to a level.
To a level. Which is why Nick Sirianni is their perfect guy. Nick Sirianni is their perfect guy.
I'll ask the question to you. You really think they're going to fire this guy?
The way that game looked.
How about this? What if Nick Sirianni was taking marching orders the whole year from the front office?
I'm glad.
How do you fire that when all he did was do every single thing that you said? Are you really? See, this is how Jason Garrett kept his job.
Mm-hmm.
This is how Mike McCarthy may keep his job. You have to remember, okay, everyone's under the impression that Nick made all these calls by himself. There's not a chance. If anything, Tone, the 2023 season exposed. It wasn't that these guys weren't good coaches, which it did anyway. But what it did show you is the lack of autonomy they have over the roster and the coaching selections.
Let me ask you
I've been saying since day one. I've heard even my friend Derek Gunn and all these guys talking like Nick makes the call on, and I never
believed that.
He makes no football decisions except putting a game plan together. The rest of it is front office driven.
Is Nick Sirianni on pace to becoming the next Jason Garrett?
He is Jason Garrett. I mean, I watched that game last night. I thought Brandon Staley was coaching the team.
It was bad.
I
It
mean,
was bad.
he's Jason Garrett.
Coach Claps. Coach Claps.
Jason Garrett lasted, what was it, 10 years, 9 years in Dallas?
And he lasted that long because he didn't rock the boat. It's the only way. That's the only reason. Wade Phillips didn't last because he rocked the boat.
To Jerry and Steven.
So you and Angela brought up a good point earlier, right? You know, we're talking about, is this guy going to lose his job or not? That's assuming he made all those decisions. And me personally, I don't believe he made any of those decisions by himself. I don't believe that at all. I believe they were motivated by people above him. You know what I mean? I've asked John McMullen, and he's under the impression he has no, and I don't want to put words in John's mouth, but me and him talked about this, and I asked him, I said, where do you think this decision came from? Like, and I'm talking about the Sean Desai one, about demoting him. He said, if you ask me, if I had to guess, that move came from above, Nick.
Of course it did.
Of course it did. Of course. And it's so funny. I spoke about this earlier with Rob. We ignored.
I want to ask you something. I want to ask you something because this is something in that city. Last year, even when I kept saying there's not a chance in hell that Nick Sirianni is making decisions on that football team, even last year. And by the way, nothing's changed this year. He's the same guy he was there a year ago. Why was it so important for all the media? And I'm not saying you, I'm saying, why was it so important for everyone in that city to believe that Nick Sirianni chose the coaches, chose the game plan, hired the coordinators, when none of that was true? And I never believed a moment of it, because when I talked to Doug Peterson says that's not how it's done. And after Frank told me the analytics importance a couple months ago, I was convinced even more, and so was Seth then. That's where Seth got it from when I texted him and showed him Frank's text to me, that operation has been intact since Andy left. It's been that way since Andy and Joe Banner left. And then when Chip got it, that guy was, you said something about 5 months ago, 4 months ago maybe, when you went like this, is Howie Roseman really a better GM, or does he know how to not have people take power from him? Dude,
right.
That's where he is. He's not a better GM. He's not a better drafter. He's always been good at
he's a better manipulator.
He's not a better GM. You know what he is?
A better manipulator.
Puts more fail safes in place to make sure that his authority's not challenged.
Right. But
that's who he is.
To your question, right? Why does it seem like there was a need to kind of crown Sirianni, basically, right?
Yeah.
For me personally, right, and I guess I'll start from the root of it for me, from the fan perspective. I felt, to me personally, as a fan of the team, I just always felt that when you believe that your head coach is the captain of his ship, and you try to express that to others, even if they believe it or not, you trying to express that, I believe it's important as a sign of strength, right? And typically, when people aren't in control of their own ship, they're looked at a certain way, and they're not looked at in the same breath as these top tier head coaches, right? A Kyle Shanahan or whatever it may be, right? Take your pick. I never felt like Nick Sirianni got the respect he deserved at a point. But then, even then, after that Super Bowl loss made me take a step back from Sirianni and start looking at him more objectively, because I compared it to the 2017 Super Bowl and key decisions that were made at key times. And I felt like Nick Sirianni didn't have the it factor to make those decisions in those moments like Doug Peterson did. Because like you said, sometimes things just take a feel. Analytics can't solve every problem. Some things just require gut instinct. And I don't feel like Nick Sirianni really had that in that Super Bowl. So for me, it was important for me as a fan to try to position Nick Sirianni the way a lot of us have, is because I believe it was a sign of strength for the organization. the whole narrative about the organization, being super hands-on with the coaches, all that kind of stuff. I don't like that talk, if I'm being honest. I don't like that talk because to me, it's weak. It makes me feel like the players and the coaches aren't really in control of their own destiny. There's some hidden hand pushing buttons, and I've never been a fan of that, of that sort of environment. Just I can't stand things like that when there's a hidden hand making moves that I don't like being out of control. So,
well, you're in the
when
wrong organization if
Yeah.
that's the case. Steven, I do not believe that they're play calling analytics from the booth. I do not. Tone, let me tell you one thing about pro guys versus college guys.
Mhm.
This coaching staff talks to the Eagle players like they're still in college. You can bullshit a college kid. You can tell a college kid anything, but a pro guy who gets paid and is a professional, let me say this to you. I could spot a good coach a mile away, and I could spot a bad coach a mile away.
And that speaks
That's
to
funny, and I'll tell
your
you why.
experience. And
Get
that
this.
goes to your experience playing the sport.
My daughter, my wife and I were sitting there one time and we were watching. This is just off the top. And I was watching one of the rugby coaches kind of like try to put a practice together. I go, that guy's not a very good coach. He goes, you watched him for 20 minutes. I go, he's unorganized. He has no idea what he's doing. He has like lame ass drills. There's nothing informity to it. He's not teaching. He's not coaching. That guy's not a good coach. He's just not organized. You can tell when guys are all over the place and they're helter-skelter, and it's just not an organized practice. You watch it. You just sit there and you watch certain practices and how guys do practice. Then you watch another guy and you're like, holy shit. When I watched Mike McCoy run the Chargers, I walked in there and I saw the lallygazing and all the walking the drills and shit like that, not having a sense of urgency. I went like this. That team will never win. And someone asked me why. I go, because there's not a sense of detail. They don't really look. You start with details because in a game that inches matter, in a game that inches lead to foot and to yards, and the game is so close as it is, all of those things matter in a game like that. And when pro guys know and they see it, okay, they know it immediately. I'm not the only guy. An NFL coach can spot two things: a bust in a draft and a bad coach. And they see it all the time. I agree with you, Laura. I see you can spot it a mile away. Now, when you got a guy like a Jason Garrett or a Nick Sirianni, you remember when you get drafted into organizations like that, what you do as a player, like here, when Coach Landry ran the Cowboys, When Jimmy ran the Cowboys, he ran the Cowboys. When a guy like Fonts ran the Lions, he kind of ran the Lions. Ron Hughes kind of had a lot of say in the personnel. Management had a lot of say in what was going to go on when it came to hiring of particular coaches, when it came to how Fonts ran the Lions back in the day. When the structure's in a building, like when you get drafted to the Eagles, this. Well, the head coach has no say. So what is he going to try to do? He's going to try to be my buddy. And so he's going to be my buddy when that means this. Jalen Hurts looks at Nick Sirianni as another guy in the locker room, but he doesn't look at him as an authoritative figure where he can go to him in any way whatsoever and make his case known. He may say something to Brian Johnson or to him on a play call, but at the end of the day, he's just a puppet in what they want to do organizationally. There's too many chefs in the kitchen here with this.
So let me ask you this then. Are the Philadelphia Eagles the exception or are they the rule?
You know what? It's a great question. I think the Chargers are run like that with the Spanos family. I think the Jets are run a little bit like that. Joe Douglas is trying to change that culture. I think
because what if they're more
now, to me, the Jets remind me a little bit of Philly, and I think he's going along with a little bit of what Joe Douglas wants because of the hiring of Nathaniel Hackett, because the quarterback wanted it, the organization wanted it for Rodgers. Dude, you hire great coaches and assistant coaches for your organization, not for your fucking whether or not your quarterback likes him. Is he the
Because
right fit? Is he
because I'm
going to
willing
help
to.
Aaron Rodgers? Because he surely didn't help anyone else.
I
So
I I asked that question because I'm willing to argue, or I'm willing to believe that there are more teams that think like the Philadelphia Eagles than not, but the difference is
correct.
they know when to pull back.
Comes down to ownership.
And I think that's where the Philadelphia Eagles fall short. In
You think Bob
theory,
Kraft allows his coaches to be a coach?
yes,
Okay.
I think he
That's
does.
why remember when you asked me what's the best job? I think Arthur Blank, the owner of the Falcons, is going to hire a guy like Belichick. I think Belichick gets that job down there. And I
Yeah.
think Bill's going to bring an offensive-minded guy in there. They're going to bring they got some pieces. They need a quarterback, obviously. But this comes down to ownership, allowing you to be a coach and have autonomy in the room. Remember, Tom, what's that line that Parcells?
And if the owner's allowing you, that trumps Howie Roseman. And that makes
totally.
And that's why
Howie Roseman's a cock block.
That's why as much as we talk about the ownership, it always goes back to Howie.
He's a poor wingman.
Howie is he's a character in the movie. I'm gonna figure it out.
He's a bad consigliere. He's giving you poor advice, like Tom Hagen giving Sonny when he was on the Causeway.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
They lit his ass up.
Hey, Sonny, you're building a great reputation for yourself. Yeah, you got Sonny whacked on the Causeway.
Man, I wrote something down here, right? And I said, I still believe he is the guy. I'm talking about Hurts. I wrote here, I said, I still believe he's the guy, but he won't get to the next level under Sirianni.
No.
And I firmly believe that, but then that begs the question, who can get Jalen Hurts to the next level?
I think he can turn this around. I do, because I saw him do something last year that, but I will say this, one thing that I've come to the conclusion of, having watched him for 18 games this year, he's making business decisions, and he needs to stop that. And Boomer said it well. You got to learn to play with your contract. Well, I'll tell you what, son, my problem with Jalen Hurts last night, I'll take a bad game. But what I won't take is a guy shaking his head and not wanting to play. That, to me, was unacceptable. That it was a surrender because AJ wasn't there. The entire offense wasn't there. One guy didn't show up. And get this, Tone, it wasn't that you got beat. It was you didn't want to play.
Right. I agree with everything you just said, right? I think that lends also to the fact that this offensive identity, what they've been doing, had no creativity whatsoever. You've dedicated
on them too much.
You rely the success of your offense relies too heavy on one-on-ones. And you said it earlier, right? You said you said this team, it looks like it's just matchup football, one-on-one football all the time, instead of coaches and guys running this route to get this person open for this route. And this goes into what I noticed last night. Did you notice Troy Aikman was killing the Eagles for their route combinations? Guys running into each other.
I talked about the day before.
He's like, hold on, time's out. Why are these two receivers so within 5 yards of each other? What are you doing? He said when we spoke to these guys in pre-production, we got a sense that these guys were going to lean on the run game, try to shorten the game. They're missing AJ Brown. They got a quarterback with a bad finger. They're going to try to use their offensive line to get through this game. I lied to you not. Troy Aikman says, he says, they're not doing any of that. I'm like, yo, this is insane. So I'm looking at this team right now, and again, effort, lackluster, not making excuses of it. But I want to talk about another side of the canvas, right?
Let me end it here with this though.
Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
The two teams I saw in the playoffs that run their offense through wide receivers, the Dolphins and the Eagles,
and they're going,
and not their quarterbacks. To me, that's a fundamental philosophical, absolute problem. I'm paying that guy double. $50 million, and my offense runs through that guy, not through that wideout. And when he's not on the field and that thing falls apart like that, it's a prime
That's a problem.
example of
It's a
the
problem.
coordinator and the scheme running through one guy. It can't run through one guy, dude. It's got to run through one guy being the quarterback.
Look,
It can't be an appendage player like a wideout or a running back.
Right. You cannot build your team around a skill position. You have to build
You got to build it around a quarterback.
But around a quarterback.
Why are you paying him?
I saw that Green Bay game, and I saw the routes LaFleur had those guys running and getting them open. I'm thinking to myself, this cannot be this complicated. Because if LaFleur can get Romeo Doubs open, how can't Nick Sirianni and Brian Johnson get Devontae Smith or get Dallas Goedert open or get Olamide Zaccheaus open? The Green Bay Packers have no legit wideouts. They didn't even have Christian Watson. Who's
that guy Dobbs?
Like I'm looking at the DeMeco Ryans led Texans. They're finding ways to get Nico Collins open. They're getting John Michie the third open. They're getting Dalton Schultz. So they're getting all these guys that aren't really world beaters open. I'm looking at the Philadelphia Eagles like, how is this so difficult? You don't know why? And it goes back to what they've been saying in their press conferences. You see, they've been telling us, but we've been ignoring it. They've been saying, yeah, well, we trust our guys to win their matchups. You know what I mean? We trust our guys to win our matchups, which tells you they're not trying to scheme these guys open. They're literally putting the onus of the offense on them winning a one-on-one.
That's right.
And here's the thing. That's not a sustainable course of action.
That's because why those guys get 2 seconds for Jalen Hurts in the pocket, and because he's waiting for them to get open.
Exactly. Did you see the 3rd and 2?
Them open.
Did you see the 3rd and 2 where they had them guys going all the way like 10, 15 yards down the field? And how can the quarterback, and again, I'm not making excuses for Jalen Hurts. I want to make sure I continue to reiterate that because he was awful yesterday. There were parts of that game where I saw Jalen Hurts drop back in that pocket and he had no options because either the receivers didn't turn their head because they were still running their routes or because the blitz was in his face in 2 seconds or less. Most quarterbacks these days getting rid of the ball in 2.3, 2.4, 2.5 seconds. He was missing 0.5 of a second. Granted, that's not that amount of time in normal time, but in football time, that's a lot of time. So he had no time to really get back there and diagnose. And when he did, he didn't let go of the ball. And when he didn't, guys weren't looking around. It was just a mess, which is why I say to myself, and I look at Jalen Hurts as a guy that this situation, for him at least, could be salvageable because I saw an entire team collapse, not just the quarterback position collapse. Yes, the quarterback had 1 carry.
Why didn't he
which
take
told
off
me,
on some of them?
Which told me that he was not willing to put it on the line last night. Well, I've seen him run more for less.
Have you ever seen him go into a game and come out of a game with 1 carry?
Never. Here's the thing.
1 carry for 5 yards.
The Buccaneers were telegraphing their plays. The Buccaneers told you what they were doing, and you still couldn't stop it. I'm sitting here, every time it was 3rd down, they go empty. Y'all have no creativity. You guys are going empty formation, and they're sending 6, 7 guys at you. In an empty formation, you can't block everybody.
What's the excuse on this one, Tone? I told you, we both agreed yesterday. The Bucs are the 27th worst rushing attack in the league.
And it doesn't matter because the Eagles are the worst.
Do you give up 120 yards rushing at 4 yards a carry to the worst rushing team in the National Football League? That's want to and will.
That's want to. Part of those, part of those stats are scheme. Most of them are want to and effort. Most of it.
That's will.
So that's want to. I feel like run defense is mainly effort.
It is,
in my opinion. Pass defense is more so scheme.
Tackling is not a position.
It's an effort.
It's a mentality.
Yes.
That's a mentality that you want to go out there and do that. And I'm like I said, and I'm repeating myself here, Ben. Again,
we all are. We all are.
I'm watching the game, and I'm like, I'm watching the Giant game.
I'm watching the Cardinals game. I'm watching the Seahawks game. We're watching the Jets game, right? We're like, they told us they showed us who they were.
How did they
They
get
showed
there?
us.
Tell me how you think they got there. Do you think something
they
happened
came
in
in.
that locker room, or do you think something happened between Jalen, the coaches, the players, the coaches, or was it just a slow dissolve of faith?
I
Was it,
think
or all of it? Maybe all of it. I mean, because you had a will in the Buffalo game still.
yes,
There was a will to
it
win.
was undeniable.
Dude, that fifth quarter was as iconic as you can get for a quarterback. I don't care who he is. It was a great moment in that. It was the last moment of the year. You could have ended the Eagles season at Lincoln Financial in the fifth quarter of the Buffalo game, because after that, it has been a train wreck. Now, what happened from that fifth quarter to today? Something had to happen.
Here's the thing, right? I actually think this problem has been persisting since week 1.
This is like a forest fire.
I think, yes, it was a forest fire. It started out as smoke. It started out as a small ember, and then eventually this thing started spreading and spreading. But they were trying hard to keep the fire low. They were keeping the fire low. They were trying, but eventually the fire got to a point where it became uncontrollable. And I think when we got to that Buffalo game, and they found themselves in the same position again, being down double digits going into halftime and having to force their way to come back in that weather, in that whole circumstance. Whatever they had left was completely wrung out. And at that point, the 49ers saw a wounded dog, put it out of his misery. Then the Cowboys came in and just buried us in the backyard. I think between Buffalo week and Niners week, I said this to Rob earlier. Like I said, the Niners found a wounded dog and they put it out of its misery. I firmly believe this. That Niners game has been built up all season, all off season. And the Niners were talking all that trash, and the Eagles kind of were just rolling with it, being quiet. Every now and again, you might hear Eagles players say something, but for the most part, the Eagles really didn't reply to it. That game finally comes, and they beat you the way they beat you. And you know that's the team that you're likely going to have to go through to get to where you want to go. The way they beat you, I personally believe the Niners completely demoralized that team to the point where they felt like it doesn't matter what they do, they're not going to make it to the end of the finish line.
You know what? And I'm not saying this to you, but I'll say this. Hey,
It's
fuck
bullshit.
you, man, because at
bullshit.
the end of the day, champions get up off the mat
I
and they
agree.
go fight Frazier and Frazier 2 and Frazier 3. And they go fight people that beat them. And you get up off the mat and you go fight them dudes. And if that knocked the starch out of you, then you won a championship medal anyway. By the way, I wasn't talking to you like
no,
that.
no. I know. But here's the thing. That's something that Eagles fans have to ask ourselves, right? Like, at what point did this thing fall off the rails? And whenever we decide what point that was, what led to it specifically, and why did that affect them in the first place? Because we thought this team was made of something different than what we saw.
I did too.
And that's the part that kills me the most.
I think that's probably
I don't mind losing.
Points us the most is right there. What you said is that we thought this team had better metal.
I don't mind losing.
No, I get it.
It's a part of the game.
I mind you not getting up off the mat.
I mind you getting punched in the mouth and then running home.
Dude, success is getting off the mat. It's not about front running.
Exactly. And guess what? They were front runners the entire time. But that's why I said that. They were front runners. We didn't realize it. They were front runners and didn't realize it. And you don't realize you're a front runner until you're in the back. And when they got to the back of the bus, they realized, oh, we don't have it. And it's sad. It's quite honestly sad. And that's the part that kills me the most about this team. Yeah. I thought they were made up of something different.
Hey, can I tell you what I saw last night too? And I texted Ray Lewis last night.
Ray Lewis was watching the game last night. He was ripping their ass.
I texted him because I saw some of his tweets. And he goes, what's the one drill we did every day for 25 years at UM? I go, pursuit drill. And he goes, bingo. He goes, watch some of these games, watch some of these plays. I'm watching. He texts me and he goes, what's that drill we used to run? And let me give it to you what it was. This is how we started our practice out for 25 years at that place. The coaches would get the ball, they would throw it, and we had to run to an angle. And we did that for 35, 40 minutes every day before practice even started. We'd throw it over here. We'd all run for a second, third team. We practiced our pursuit angles. He goes, what do you think of that Eagle team? I watched about 10 of the plays, and I was like, their angles are the worst pursuit angles I've ever seen in my life for D linemen. They don't practice pursuit drills. Like, they don't practice angles. When it comes to getting to the football, that means they're not being taught to be good tacklers. Now, again, Tone, this is a different mentality today in today's NFL because of the CBA. You don't get a lot of time. Like, you don't get 30 minutes like you did back in the day because that takes away from your actual installment time.
But here's the thing, Sills. I'm willing to call. You know what I say to that? And I agree with you, right? You didn't say nothing wrong just now. You're absolutely accurate. But here's what I say to that. Bullshit. Because I see the Niners got guys prepared. I see the Ravens get guys prepared. I see coaches willing to eat fines because they want to make sure they get their guys prepared. If it was up to me, fuck the rules.
You got to do that on your own.
Listen, if it's up to me, forget the rules. We getting busy in the offseason. And if they find us, we find us. But make sure, because guess what? We're going to be ready when the season starts. I know that for a fact. What they going to do? Fine me? What they do? All right, I got to fine. Okay, so what? You know what I mean? They fined Bill Belichick last offseason, right? For
Seattle, too. They did Pete Carroll.
And guess what?
Pete Carroll gets fined every year $300,000.
Right. I'm pretty sure they already have an allowance for that now in the budget. You know, so it's just this team. I thought their foundation was sturdier than this. I thought it was sturdier than this. And now,
are you disappointed in Jalen Hurts' leadership?
I'm extremely disappointed in Jalen Hurts. Extremely disappointed. Because that was a moment where he could have put his team on his back and said, we're not losing this game. I don't care who's here, who's not here. I don't care what happened before. We showing up today and we lacing it up. And
it's his team.
I saw a quarterback that had no engagement, no fire. I saw a quarterback that lacked excitement, that was pretty much sitting by his lonesome on the sideline most of the time. He was talking to Devontae. He was talking to Dallas Goedert, so on and so forth. But, you know, the only person on that sideline that had fire was Devontae Smith.
Yeah.
When he caught that huge 50-yard catch, and then they got Dallas Goedert in for the touchdown, Devontae Smith was walking down the sideline screaming at everybody else, like, everybody, wake the hell up. This game ain't over. This game not over. Devontae Smith, he know what it takes. And I'm shocked that Jalen Hurts, look, here's the part about it. Jalen Hurts is the same whether you're winning or you're losing. His personality.
I think he's a lot like Jeter.
And I respect that. I respect that because what we saw last night is quite frankly who he is, whether they win or whether they lose.
And you have to respect the guy's personality on what he is.
Right. And he's consistent. So I had to respect that part of it. But there comes a part in time where you have to deviate from your normal matrix and say, hey, fellas, it's time to step it up. And that's how you know. And that's how you know
they don't want him to.
They, as in coaches in front office?
Yeah. They've already made him have to stand in front of a damn microphone. Think about this, Tone. For Jalen Hurts to say something publicly and for him to have to voice his opinion. Remember I told you, then you become Doug Peterson, enemy number one. He said something after the Seattle game, and he had to go out and clarify that week who he was talking about.
That was the closest we ever got to Jalen Hurts being
why
frustrated.
Did he feel compelled to have to be a leader again when he would be confronted by the front office on what he meant?
He hurt somebody's feelings.
The situation in the history of how they dealt with Wentz. Remember something. Right now, his leverage is not as high as it was a year ago because now there's going to be some people in the analytics department, because they're not football people, that will think he could turn it around, because they're not football people.
Mhm.
This is who he is. This is what he's trending to be. Hey, remember something. A football person will go, get him better coaching. Let's start there.
Right.
But you know what an
That's
analytics
my
guy will
mindset.
say?
My mindset is get him better coaching first. Find out what he is then.
But the analytics guy's not going to say that.
That's common
Because the
sense.
analytics guy hired the damn coach.
So basically, what you're saying is we got A, we got a long ass offseason ahead of us, and B,
because
and,
his
and
philosophy
B,
is gonna
all
stay
this is
intact.
cooked. We're cooked. So is that what you're saying?
Well,
We're cooked.
Philosophy is going to stay intact until they believe they're wrong.
So what do you think it would take for them to say, okay, we got to
Another
change
bad
this?
year.
Another one?
Yeah. How about this? A bad start. And Hurts looks terrible. Because then you got money on the line and you got cap on the line.
Because the contract technically didn't kick in this year. So you think
17th of March.
Right. So
that's the new calendar year.
So you think a rough start plus a rough start for Hurts will force them to really look in the mirror?
Yes. Because right now they think it's coaching. It's not.
But by then you're already in the thick of a season.
The season's lost.
Why not do our work early? It's common. If we can see what the issue is, and we're not even in the building.
Because you know why? You don't believe you're wrong. Hey, remember watch this. I'm going to talk to you now, Tone, like I'm them. Mm-hmm. Hey, kid, I've got 2 NFC title games in the Super Bowl. You got an opinion. I'm showing you this. I've won before. This is my way of doing it. I've never had a losing coach since I've owned a team. You could say whatever you want. I'm the winningest team in the NFC in the last 25 years. So all that opinion of yours is great and all. But I tell you what, 12 months ago, I was in a Super Bowl. And by the way, we had a shitty year this year. Hey, congratulations to you, Tone. I'm glad you're so spoiled. We won 11 games. Did we finish the way we wanted? No. Mm-hmm. So all that stuff you're talking, great. You know what my record is the last 2 years? NFC title, and I'm 25-9.
And you know what I say to that?
Start barking about me not knowing what I'm doing.
Right.
That's how they think, Tone.
No, I feel you. And you know what I say to that? Because I'm an asshole. I'll say, well, 30 years, 1 Super Bowl. 30 years, 3 Super Bowl appearances, 1 win. So
Doug?
I'm trying to figure out how successful are you really?
Hey,
are we here for NFC East banners? Are we here for
security
NFC Championship banners? Or which is it? Let me know, Howie.
Security.
Let me know, Mr. Laurie.
I want his office cleaned out.
Hey, listen. Bring me a cardboard box. Bring me a dump truck. Whatever you need. Carry it out for me. But one thing they gonna know for a fact is how I feel. See, listen,
what do you
man.
think they think like me
30,
or you?
They think more like what you were saying.
Yes.
Yes, of course. Yes. But 30, here's the thing, right? Are we in this for NFC titles or NFC East titles or Super Bowls? Because if they say Super Bowls, well, as far as I'm concerned, you failed 29 years out of 30.
Dude, the boat has to go down for them to believe it's them.
The boat isn't already down?
No, not
you just hired the coach 3 years ago.
The boat's got water on it. Do you think 11 wins?
That's a bad way to do business,
Tone,
man.
3 straight years of playoffs, 11 wins. Do you really think they think the boat sunk? I don't.
See, I feel like the boat. I feel like the boat sank, but
I think so too.
But if they're not seeing that, then we have bigger issues.
Do you think they believe the boat's underwater, or do you think it's taking water on? How they see it?
I'm glad you asked me that again. If I'm separating how I feel,
yes.
Do I believe that they believe that they're in trouble? No.
It's an easy
fix. Because by their estimation, they're looking at it as first of all, based off of the Desai move, they already feel like that defense was being underutilized. So they already based off that move, they already put into their mind, no, it's not our players, it's the coaches. You know what I'm saying? So if I had to be on either side of the fence with that question, I don't believe that they believe that this ship is underwater yet.
Do you know why the defense is in the shape it's in?
They've cut corners and they can't draft.
Well, okay. Here's what it's so front office and personnel department driven. Tone, they don't want a scheme. What they want is one way of playing defense, which makes it easy to profile the type of player that they can bring in and go like this. Okay, I'm not going to pay $20 million for Roquan Smith, but I'll pay for a guy who kind of plays like him at $20 million cheaper. And what they do is it's the same kind of profile, but just at the dollar store versus shopping at Neiman Marcus. And they'll plug that guy in to a bend but don't break defense. And they profile the guys to fit and they plug and play. It's easy personnel-wise to go find a guy that would fit your scheme instead of bringing a coordinator in to change the scheme, to get his own coaches in there, to get a 43-34 look. Dude, do you understand the amount of money you have to spend when you change philosophical mentality on that side of the ball? You've got to change. You've got to find pass rushers. You've got to find lockdown corners. They've never had lockdown corners in there in the last 3 years. They've had center fielders. And I said they had center fielders a year ago.
So you think what they've done
on the quarterback last year? These guys are basically the same dude.
So I'm trying. So if I'm understanding you correctly, basically what you're saying is their defensive philosophy is based on their ability to sustain it financially.
Yes.
Not putting the most talented people in the best positions.
They want
to build. They have a framework for their defense.
Yes,
and they have predetermined price tags for each position on that field, and they're not going to deviate from that, even if the talent is spectacular. They have a framework, and they're not going to deviate from it. That's what you're saying.
That's why they don't change. That's why when they hire coordinators, how do you hire a brand new coordinator and don't change?
I'm totally with you on that.
And that coordinator doesn't bring his scheme in.
I've never heard of it before in my life. You hire someone new and they don't bring anything with them. So what are they here for? Just to do what you tell them to do?
Yes.
That's not how. Listen, I can't wait to hear our guy JAKIB. I can't wait because I know JAKIB will come with the heat.
Let me before I bring Gary Cobb in here, because remember Gary Cobb said last week, I want these guys at least to pick a chair up and hit someone over the head.
Right. Fight somebody, curse somebody, do something.
I'll tell you what, man. The lack of will to play in that game last night was arguably a disgrace. That was a disgrace. Let's bring JAKIB in from Fox 29.
Yes, sir. Let's get him in.
Thanks a lot, Tony.